welcome to the Irish Angle in association with William Hill, who are now non-runner money back for the Aintree Grand National. Visit williamhill.com or download the app, knowing that if your horse doesn't run, you will get your money back. As always, 18 plus, and please gamble responsibly. I'll have a runner-by-runner guide for the Grand National on the YouTube channel, hopefully on Thursday evening, just after declaration, so keep an eye out for that. We'll give a little shout to Aintree later on in the show, lads, but we'll kind of recap on the big week gone by, a big Easter period of racing. Johnny, did the Easter Bunny come?
The Easter Bunny came, yeah. I was in Mallow, Emma, for the first 2 days of the 3-day meeting working, and I was in Fairyhouse as a race score yesterday with a load of cousins from America. So I had a really interesting experience of 3 days racing, which were busy because the first day in Mallow, I mean, it is mad with the climate crisis how often now you go to race meetings and the weather's a big factor. The weather was like, 2 or 3 jockeys said it was as bad as they'd ever ridden in terms of the crosswinds. But there was a fundraiser in Mallow on Saturday. All proceeds at the gate went to the Down Syndrome Centre in Cork. And that there was a great feeling about the day to see all the kids and all of that. Bumper crowd on Sunday in Mallow, like really, really bumper crowd. And then Fairyhouse yesterday was manic, to put it mildly. So fascinating 3 days.
Yeah, we'll go into a bit more of what you were talking about there later on. But Paddy, first of all, how was your Easter? I suppose capped off by a good weekend of racing.
Yeah, good Easter. It's always exciting. A couple of younger kids, I suppose. Yeah, plenty of chocolate and too much chocolate, I suppose. And I'm not a massive chocolate lover, surprising enough. I'm quite sweet as it is, Johnny. So there's a bit left over, you know. And yeah, no, it was great. Great racing, big fields and good competitive racing. It was a good watch.
It was kind of from start to finish, Cork, Fairyhouse, and look, we'll talk about the big one first, the Irish National, Soldier of Milan. Paddy, have we ever seen a more impressive winner of the Irish National? 16 lengths, demolition job is the only way you could put it, really.
It was, and it was, I suppose, a long way out. You were kind of looking at him going, Jesus, you know, he's going to win, and he's going to win really easy, bar a fall, you know. It's rarely you see a horse do that in such a competitive handicap, make it look a bit like a beginner's chase or something, you know. And this fella did. I'd say he's a fair horse going forward, and you know, I have to give credit to Emmett Mullins. He keeps pulling it out of the bag, doesn't he? Every year he's not your traditional follow their bumper novice beginner's chases. You know, he's not afraid to mix it all up, and fair play to him. And I suppose shrewd owner, shrewd trainer. Extremely good rider. Now, I think Donna for a long time. I like Donna as a rider. He's not the smallest, but he's so stylish and so strong, and like he does remind me of the man who let him in yesterday on the Hunter, Paul Carberry. You know, he's that sort of style about him. But he'd a mixed bag, I suppose. For a few days, he got 2 falls at the last in graded races when he'd big chances, but took nothing out of him confidence-wise. You know, he was sharp, he was good. Delighted for him, you know, he's a big winner on TV, and yeah, he's someone I've always liked as a rider. He's a really nice fella as well, hard-working. And it can't be easy for someone like that to ride that many winners in a year, and big winners, because he's not in big yards. And Emmett doesn't have a whole pile of runners, but it's a bit like Mark Walsh, I suppose, to turn up on the day and say, listen, you know, you'll have to win today because the money is down, and to be able to go and get it done. And some other lads need to be riding a lot of winners to get that sort of confidence. But I really like Donna as a rider, and it's, you know, there was plenty of very good riding performances over the weekend as well.
Yeah, he's definitely a man riding at the top of his game. And in fairness, Emmett has had confidence in him for a long time. He's placed his trust in Donna's hands. And how about that man, Emmett Mullins, Johnny? Like, this is some training performance. Like, this time last year, the horse hadn't even seen a race course. He had won a point. He made his debut in a Punchestown bumper last year. 4 runs over fences, rocks up in the National, and absolutely blows them apart.
Blew them apart, Emma, yeah. I ended up backing him in the end at probably the worst price he was ever at. I think 11-2 on course, and I wouldn't have had I don't think I have a great record in the National. I seem to recall back in Our Duke when he won it for Jessica Harrington, but it's a race I find quite tough. But like as Richard Pugh said in the commentary yesterday, it kind of felt like half of Fairyhouse was on it. The amount of people I spoke to before racing, what do you fancy in the National? And they were saying Soldier Milan. Like, just so many people seem to fancy him. You have to say massively that's an Emmett Mullins factor. Like I had a funny day. I ended up going with a mate of mine. We got a taxi from the city centre. And whilst I was waiting on the taxi, I went into the confession box for a pint. And when I was there, a fella came in and he had a tip. And his tip was for Paul Byrne and Emma Mullins in the first race. And so we watched that. And that was the first leg of their double or whatever. Horse, Jet to Monte Carlo, that's probably cost a few quid. He was very, very good and got a good ride, I felt, as well, in terms of a race that there was a good pace on. He was well positioned. Soldier Milan, though, like if you're ever back to horse in the Irish National or had anything to do with him, it was absolutely perfect. He was just done so much right from start to finish. And as you mentioned, Emma, like, this horse having, the shades of some of Emmett's horses in the past, even his horse Noble Yates went on to win the Grand National, similar enough kind of profile, both by sires. Like Yates wouldn't necessarily be mad popular. Soldier of Fortune certainly isn't popular. And yes, Emmett Mullins and Paul Byrne can seem to do it with anything. And what's interesting about this horse is they just didn't go over hurdles. And what I love about the Emmett Mullins operation is that he challenges stuff that people just accept without thinking about it. And racing, in my view, there's an awful lot of that. You just do something because people always did it. And it's kind of a bit like the newspaper industry is kind of still carrying match reports because that's the things that they always did, even though, like, for me now, match reports are kind of almost obsolete because everyone can see a video of the game the night before. But the newspapers haven't kind of changed with the times. And racing is a bit like that, where you just do something, you go bumper, hurdles, chase, because that's the way it's been done. But Emmett Mullins doesn't necessarily do that. And he's like, this horse, what's the benefit of going hurdling with him at this stage when he's a chaser? And obviously he had an idea in mind that maybe he could be a Grand National horse. But I was in Paul Byrne's his betting shop, his betting office, Fitzbet office, when this horse ran in his prep race the day before. And it was just interesting that the vibe that day was that they were kind of giving him a bit of education for the National, that it wasn't, even if it sacrificed his chance a bit that day by going out in front, they wanted him coming through horses and to learn a bit, because he hadn't learned that much and he was so lightly raced going into the National. But it was a breathtaking performance. Like, maybe if Paul Townend's mount had stayed up, we might have had something of a race, but it was a breathtaking performance. Maybe there'll be speculation now that JP McManus might buy him, but like what Paul and Emmett are doing, they're making the race a racing game that is a financial basket case to get involved in. If you're an owner, you're lucky to get 15% of your money back. Paul to win $250,000 or whatever it was yesterday with this horse, like, it's incredible going. It had a big double on the day as well. I don't think he backed the first horse, but incredible going. And it was funny. Like, it felt like, I think Emmett alluded to this afterwards, it felt like a public gamble. Like, there was a real massive gamble on the horse, and it was brilliant watching it. As a punter watching it, it was fantastic because everything went like clockwork. But I thought it was a breathtaking performance from the horse, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the public have kind of latched on to this, Emmett Mullins, if he comes with a horse with this kind of profile, people just want to get behind it because we've seen him do it. Like you said, Johnny, these kind of outside the box thinking with these horses, like some of his biggest success, like you said, Noble Yates, Fairyhouse, like, it's not all of his horses taking the most conventional route, but he finds a way to get them to the big targets in the top condition, and that's kind of what's catapulted him, I suppose, into the higher ranks of training. And Paul Byrne has kind of been with him all the way up along. It was breathtaking how high this horse can go. Look, it's hard to say. Like, our Duke probably before him, I think, was the widest margin winner of the Irish National, and this is a horse, look, I mean, he's a horse with huge potential. It'll be exciting to see where he can go next for connections. But a few other big performances on the Sunday. Paddy, proactive in Argumeen. Slade Steele winning his first race since the Supreme Novice Hurdle back in 2024. That was a good one as well. What else caught your eye?
I suppose Slade Steele stood out to me because, he was a good winner in Cheltenham, and 2 years without, in between drinks is a hell of a long time for a talented horse. And look, I suppose whoever made the decision to go back hurdling, it was a good one now. And for me, he could be the next Bob Ollinger sort of job, heading for stayers kind of hurdles that way, because I think if you look back on the stayers hurdle division, there's very few of them young horses that start out in a stayers. We've seen them all this year, the kind of younger contingent don't tend to step up to the mark. It's usually a horse that's hit a really high peak and maybe getting a little bit older and more mature that can actually and has the stamina to go back and do that. So I think he is a really good profile for that if that's the way he goes, you know. Yeah, I suppose another thing that kind of caught my eye was, geez, there's a lot of fallers, wasn't there, in Fairyhouse? I don't know if you guys spoke to anyone there, but I remember years and years ago, a long, long time ago, we were at a Grand National meeting as well. And for whatever reason, the birch was just packed very, very tight. Now, I don't like to see a horse get punished for not jumping bad. You know, the Hunters Chase the other day, Finney Maguire and I don't know who was beside him at the second last. 2 horses jumped it perfectly fine. They just got tight. And we've been teaching our steeplechasers to just rub the birch, you know. They looked a little bit like event jumps to me now. It looked like you had to get air. And when your ground is drying out and you're going speedy, good handicaps, big fields, I don't think there's any need for birch to be that hard in fences.
Yeah, the jumps did look, I suppose, particularly solid, but it's kind of something I'd nearly associate with Fairyhouse. I don't know, am I wrong in saying that, Paddy? Is it something maybe that they've done? No?
No. Like back in the day, I remember Down Royal used to be very, very big and very hard. I remember the time in Fairyhouse when they did repack, and look, it can be just if the tractor is pulling the birch, they can just pull it a touch too tight that there's no give, you know, and if you've never seen a fence, you go down, you see it's chopped in a certain way that it lends for a horse to be able to skim the top of it. And, you know, that's what we do. We teach them to go. You're teaching most horses just to jump the belly of the jump and brush through the top of it. But the horse of the day, now, I just found a lot of them, when they went to rub it a little bit, they were kind of, I would say, gravity in midair kind of stopped them, and they're not used to it, you know, so they're not mind themselves enough to kind of get back on their heels and jump. They looked a little bit more event types, but I don't think there's any need for it. And I think if you were clever about it, you could make them a bit bigger out the country if you want, you know, out Ballyhack where the horses are fresher. But I think the last 2 fences in any race course shouldn't be the most solid 2 or the last 3, because that's where it's getting down and gritty, really. Fairyhouse always had a big fence, but a really, really good track for a big fence. Navan were always big, Down Royal were always big, and Punchestown, but they were always, because it's such a big open track, you could ride them like that, you know. Them smaller tracks don't need that. But I don't know, I haven't spoken to any jockeys or anything. I was just thinking there was a few horses there that the punishment didn't fit the crime for me.
Yeah, I suppose like you said, you want them to be a little bit more forgiving as they're getting more tired. And did you take much notice that yourself, Johnny? Like, I suppose maybe it should be something like Paddy said, maybe horses get used to jumping certain types of fences. Maybe it should be just, you know, a standard across all race courses that, you know, it should be kind of the same type of fence, their approach with for everywhere maybe.
Yeah, that's an intriguing one. I hadn't thought an awful lot about, and, you know, we did have some high profile fallers obviously on the day. I definitely feel the fact that Ireland has different racetracks and different fences from track to track makes it, you know, it makes it interesting, like that you've easier fences at certain tracks, more, you know, tougher fences at Fairyhouse. I'd say Fairyhouse is up there with the toughest jumping test in the country, but that's something definitely for, I suppose, for the jockeys to talk about and the racetrack to think about afterwards, because you want that balance between a test and something that you know, gives horses a chance as well. But as somebody who's not a jockey, it's not something I would have thought about. But very interesting point from Paddy.
Yeah, look, I suppose you can see why there's, as Paddy said, why there's different, maybe smaller fences in some of the country tracks in the summertime. But, you know, you'd imagine maybe like the likes of those bigger tracks should all have, you know, a standard of fence that is similar. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see maybe jockeys' comments on it on the day. See, do they think that the fences had any impact on the fallers, or if it was just, look, that's the way it looked visually on the TV. But a few more things to recap on from Fairyhouse. Great day on Sunday. Two grade 1 winners for Brian Hayes and Colin Murphy. First was Zanouche in the Mares Hurdle, and Cian Cork and Andy Slattery teaming up then as well to win their first grade 1s. Paddy, it's nice to see, I suppose, the big races getting spread around, and we'll start off first Zanouche maybe. I think it was a first grade 1 winner for Brian Hayes, and Colin Murphy definitely knows what to do with a good mare when he gets one.
It's amazing. Two riders at two completely different stages of their careers, and I would have lost money now that it was Brian's first grade one, but I think the interview he said it was, but it just goes to show. For me, like you don't have to be a superstar at anything. If you can be consistent and keep a certain level of consistency and professionalism and respect. And for me, Brian Hayes, he is, if you had a young fella that you wanted to say, well, listen, if you want to be a jockey and make a really good living and enjoy yourself, look at Brian Hayes. It turns up day in, day out. You never hear any drama about him. Nothing's flash, nothing's brilliant, but just an outstanding, cracking rider, and has probably played third fiddle or second fiddle in Willie's for years, but is happy to do so and happy to give any horse that he gets a really good ride. And Colin Murphy has backed Brian since he's come back training big time, and they're repaying each other something special, because for me, I suppose people are probably looking at Colin Murphy. Some people look at him now and say, Jesus, that's a good trainer, that fella. But in my heyday, like Colin he's brave Inca, man, and what was the other little filly that had Voller Levedette?
Big Zeb.
Yeah. Big Zeb, Garrity and McCoy's riding for him, and geez, he could train, and it was funny. I think it was more the downturn in the economy that probably stopped Colin Murphy training. It definitely wasn't ability and or anything like that. But I was delighted for them, because it was a brave shout when you're on your way back and you have a mare probably that good that, geez, you just take your chance and bring them to Cheltenham, because other yards there have brought probably 30, 40, 50 horses when 10 might have done, that sort of way. So if you've one that you thought had a chance, and to be able to sit back and say, no, we'll go to Limerick and the best interest of the mare. And it was, superb to see that a syndicate horse as well. And I think, for me, Colin Murphy was the first one that I remember syndicating a really good horse, and he kind of kick-started his career that way. So brilliant for him. And then the other end of the scale is the Slattery's there as well. I mean, how good are them boys? To see young Keen Cork still riding the horse. There'd be 10 other jockeys in that way and could have rode him, but the Slattery's are. And if you go back through even their apprentices, if there's anybody there with a license, they will give them a ride and they'll give them a chance. Like I rode winners for the Slattery's years ago when we were kind of, Willie was in O'Grady's and they were sharing the gallop with Edward, and if you rode a piece of work, that was it. You were guaranteed you'd ride that horse, and that's gone out of the game completely now. I'd say the Slattery's are the only people that can, I suppose, maybe is it manage the owners or whatever the expectations are, they'll stand up for their own, but it was great to see two kind of different smaller outfits coming away with the big prizes. Two lovely riders, two good one, as I said, one young man on the way up, and Brian won't mind me saying he's probably at the tail end of his career, but I love seeing the headlines, Rachel Blackmore's husband wins a grade one. it's madness, isn't it? Like, Jesus Christ, he's been around, everyone in racing, and outside it knows Brian Hayes. So could be a great year for Brian. He could go on and win an English national, who knows? But he's riding the crest of a wave, and yeah, it was great to see, and really, the Slattery's, even when I was in the racing school, Andy Slattery was, people were giving out about, the standard of kids coming out here, there, and everywhere. And Willie would say to you, if you want good kids, you have to give them opportunities as well. Someone else can't do all the work for you and expect perfection into your yard, but they've always been willing, and delighted to see them get the winners.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I think Brian Hayes, like when he gets the chances on these horses, like he very rarely let you down. Like he's always there, and I thought he gave her a brilliant ride as well as Anoush. She was so tough. He switched her back inside, and she just battled all the way to line. For maybe a second, it looked like she might have been beaten, but she's a fair mare, I'd say. Johnny, what did you make of it all? It was nice to see.
Definitely, yeah. Like there probably are. I suppose there are too many graded races in Ireland. I think in general, like there were so many. Like the graded chase in Cork, that took place on Sunday. Like to have 3 runners, 5 runners the year before, 2 runners the year before that. Like, so they're like, and I suppose it's one of those weekends where certainly the action in Mallow, like horses can be spread out and you can get situations like Ray Hackett winning a race like that. But at the same time as saying there are too many great races, like for Ray Hackett to win that race, what it meant to him, like you could just tell, like it was to beat Willie Mullins in a graded race in Mallow, like for Roger Quinlan to win, and then to see Andrew Slattery win, and like Brian Hayes win a grade 1, and Colin Murphy coming, reminding people that he hadn't gone away. Like I do think that national hunt racing really does need this. Like, and it was funny, as well. Like in Mallow, one thing that's I just thought it was kind of disappointing that it's just the way racing is changing and people getting out of the habit of doing things that they did. Like and yourself, Emma, when you're in Mallow on kind of the student days, and it felt a bit like a student day on Sunday. Like the young people and the race goers, they weren't necessarily around the horses. But like when Ray Hackett came into the winners' enclosure, there was literally not a sinner there to welcome them in. Like there was nobody hung around to clap Ray Hackett and Roger Quinlan and the horse in. I thought that was disappointing, and you can see in other races like handicaps where there are more people around. But like this wasn't like Willie Mullins and an owner who wasn't there winning the race. This was Ray Hackett winning, and nobody, like there was literally a pin drop coming into the parade ring. I just thought that was a bit disappointing. I think people who go racing, and like particularly given how Mallow is such a national hunt country, people who go racing, they should appreciate that this is a once in a lifetime moment potentially for Ray Hackett, and maybe even for Roger Quinlan to have a winner like that. And Roger Quinlan, like that, there was pressure on that ride to win that race. Like he was taking on Harry Cobden, who was on. Now Roger didn't know the market. Like he was actually on an odds-on favourite in the end, but he probably thought he was taking on the favourite, and there was a bit of pressure on that ride. Like he's a tricky horse, and like I just thought that the gravity of what they achieved and win a graded race should be reflected more by people who go racing. I just think people appreciate that when you can clap them in and there's a bit of a reception. Like there was a massive reception in Fairyhouse for all the winners yesterday. I thought that in Mallow yesterday. If you are going racing, don't forget that people deserve a bit of acclaim for something like this, and there was nobody there in Mallow. Like every race score was basically in the bar or somewhere else.
Yeah, it was Liam Quinlan, brother of Roger. Roger's in Ballydoyle now, I think. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, sorry,
no,
Liam,
you're grand. You're fine. You're grand. Yeah, he's younger brother of Roger, I think. But yeah, Johnny, I have been like that's kind of a well-known race day around kind of the local area in Mallow, where I'd be from. Like it's a piss up really, basically. Like I know they'll get great crowds, but like I've been to it often, and like I go racing fairly regularly, but like it's probably one of the only race days that I've been to where I never left the bar and I never went out to see a horse. It's kind of just the vibe of it. There's a big marquee down the end. You go in there and you stay there for the day. You just have a bit of a party, really. That's all that happens there, and that's probably why there was no one around. Like, and the attendance figures will be great, but like at the end of the day, all of my friends used to go that back then. None of them go racing now. It's kind of it's just kind of one of those days. It's just a local day out for the kind of secondary school kids, really, I suppose. And it was maybe a slightly similar vibe in Fairyhouse yesterday. Now, probably not as extreme. There'd be more of a mix of a crowd there, Johnny. But like there was maybe some negative reactions on social media to the crowd in Fairyhouse yesterday. Look, I thought it was alright. I think they added to the atmosphere a fair bit, especially before the national. Like they were belting out the Irish anthem and chanting songs and stuff, which I thought added to the bit. But there is drawbacks, I suppose, as well when you're attracting a crowd who are going, I suppose, with the sole ambition of drinking at the races.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, Emma, like, and it strikes at the heart of, I suppose, the drink culture in this country. Like, alcohol is a drug that basically you can buy legally and people can get into the races yesterday. Like, we were caught badly in traffic, and in Fairyhouse, missed the first race. So we got to see the crowds walking from Rathote up to the track, and like, there were quite simply some students who were already very drunk, like, and that is unfortunate. Like, and I've seen that at student days as well, which I feel have gotten better in Ireland. I think it's not as bad as it was, but like when you get young people who are drunk before the first race starts, and this is at say 1:30, 2 o'clock, it's very messy. And like I don't envy the racetracks here, because these people have paid in. And it's very, very hard for security. Yes, a massive crowd at Fairyhouse. It's difficult at Mallow as well, because like I saw two young lads fighting in Mallow, literally 5 minutes after Harry Cobden was saying how great the crowd was there, and they were a real knowledgeable racing crowd. 5 minutes later, we had like two drunken students dressed in suits leathering into each other, and it was really unedifying. And to see how slow people were to kind of intervene as well was kind of alarming. Now, I was watching this from the press room, so maybe I should have gone out and tried to stop them, like, because it could have gotten out of hand. And then you had Fairyhouse yesterday, where there was a feeling of like it's a big drinking session, like, for a lot of people, a lot of young people. And fortunately, that's kind of Irish culture. I don't know what the racecourse can do about it. Like, it seemed to be hard to get a drink in the bars as well. I was lucky enough to get up to the owners and trainers some of the day, but it's I don't know what you do here. Like, it's kind of a cultural thing. Maybe young people aren't drinking as much as they used to years ago, but like when you have a day like yesterday at Fairyhouse and Mallow on Sunday, and I'm not blaming the racecourse for this, it's a massive drinking session. It's like an Ireland away match. It's a massive drinking session, and if you have thousands of young kids there who've been drinking all day, it's inevitable you're going to have some trouble.
Yeah, look, Paddy, I suppose it's kind of a happy medium you want. Like, you want these young people going racing, but at the same time, you kind of want it to kind of stay an enjoyable day for the older crowd that goes well.
I do, Emma. Yeah. But look, the whole model now is to get younger people in, because for my money, that race courses probably sit back and say, well, the older people and people that are going racing, they'll always come racing, and we'll make it like a student day. That's what they want, that's the way everything is going. So you be careful what you wish for. Now, we do sound like a couple of old gits here, really, giving out about kids and drinking and there. But I'd say the price of going to the bar or a pub has been taken away from any young people, really. They would have gone to an off license and bought a bottle of vodka or whatever they drink for 20 euros.
That's a very good point,
you can't go into the pub and spend 7-8 euros on a couple of drinks, a gin and tonic there, or whatever it is, or a vodka and coke or whatever, and inevitably they're going to get pissed quicker if you're drinking it out of the bottle and free pouring it. So listen, there's a lot to it, and listen, there's a lot more than drink being taken, I would think, because the whole society is completely changing. But look, that's the way the race courses are having to go, because what do? Do you not let them in? Well, then you'll never have young people racing, and okay, you'll have an older crowd that don't like it. But like, I watched it on TV yesterday. It sounded like there was a right good buzz there at the National. Now, I wasn't in the middle of it or any part of it, but I was at home. It sounded like the Viva Stadium or something. So look, I don't know.
To be fair, like, I wouldn't want to tire them all with the same bush, like all the young people that were there yesterday, because I was at the very top of the stand there for the National, and like, there's some crack in the stand, like, and it was the young people that were making it, like, they were singing, and it was good, like, and I can't imagine anyone didn't enjoy that. But I suppose there's negative sides to everything, and you just kind of have to find a bit of a happy medium. But definitely wouldn't tire them all with the same bush. Lucky, you kind of just have to find somewhere in between that where everyone will be happy, which is a tricky thing to do as well, I suppose. Just quick recap on the rest of the stuff from the weekend. Nice to see Sean Cleary-Farrell get a big winner on Saturday as well. Paddy, I think it was his first winner since that unfortunate incident in the Triestes, I suppose, but he got his name back in the big lights afterwards.
Yeah, and you know what? Credit to William Mullins and all his team there, because it would have been very easy for him not to put him back on horses, after, a guaranteed 99.9% winner of a Tiestes, and a good winner the horse was going to be, to be fair to owners, Lara Byrne there, I know Lara myself from Hardy Eustace and Schindler's Hunt and that crew down through the years, and brilliant men, there was plenty of up and down days and Desi Hughes, and Lara was always one of the most solid owners you could come across. But like Sean Cleary-Farrell, we've all done it. We've all fell off horses, but just to do it at a Tiestes meeting in front of a big crowd on TV in this day and age feels different than it would be in the beginners in Kilbeggan or somewhere, nobody watching it. But and look, he gave the horse a smashing ride. He's a cracking young rider. He was in the headlines for all the wrong things recently, but now he's back on track. And I suppose racing can chew you up and spit you out sometimes, but they do put an arm around something like that, because we've all been there. And it's great to see when people, I'd say the Wareham were probably the happiest people, and you're never happy when you're beat, But when you see a young fella like that getting a kicking, we can all have a go at older and more experienced lads, but a young lad like that getting a kicking who's starting out in their career, there's no one in this game who'd begrudge it.
Yeah, fair play to him. He won the big €100,000 handicap hurdle feature race this Saturday on Cadix to DBR. It's a horse who showed plenty of promise, I suppose, but maybe just disappointing since. But it's a massive confidence boost, I suppose, for him. Like riding any winner for a young jockey is a confidence boost, but to ride the feature race winner on Irish National Weekend at Fairyhouse, it's good for him. And like you said, he's a young lad with plenty more to come. Johnny, anything else from you over the weekend? You were in Cork Saturday and Sunday. Harry Cobden took a little while to get off the mark with his 6 rides on Sunday. Eventually got there on the final one, but plenty of short price ones beaten. He must have been getting fairly anxious.
Yeah, great to see Sean Clearfield with that winner, and nice few quid for him as well, and a nice pot. Yeah, it was mad. Like the 3 days in Mallow, like they're, if they kind of can market that, and I think like people did stay over, and like Mallow is a town that would be quiet a lot of the time, to market it as a kind of a weekend to spend there, because it's actually cracking. I really enjoyed it, because like Ryan Moore was riding there on the Saturday. He had 3 rides, no winner, and the odds of Ryan having and Barry Cobden having no winner from the 9 rides on aggregate would have been like lottery numbers, because there were so many shorties among them, and we got to the 9th ride between them with Harry Cobden riding an easy to back odds-on favourite, and you're thinking, God, this is genuinely a big story if he doesn't win. But I have to say, I really enjoyed watching Josh Williamson over the second day. Like I'm not sure if you want to say he outrode Harry Cobden in Dowie Absurd Clash, but he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant on him. And in that beginner's chase then, when he was riding Wingmen, it was the first time I really sort of noticed Josh over a fence. I thought he very, very classy kind of manner about the way he rode that horse for a fellow who's inexperienced, not long gone conditional. And himself and Charlie O'Dwyer had the winner the same day. So you're thinking, like, I'm thinking of my age here, Conor O'Dwyer and Storm Norman, but like 2 beautiful horsemen. That doesn't mean like it's easy for Charlie or Josh to translate that, and it's you need backing behind it. I felt that Josh showed massive talent, like, and I loved the way he hemmed Harry Cobden in on Absurd after a little incident, I think at the 3rd last. So it's brilliant to see stuff like that, race riding. And Paddy Toomey as well had Paddy Toomey had a double on day 1. I thought the filly that won, was it Moody, who won the stakes race, was very, very good. Won the race last year with the horse that was having her stable debut as well. She was very good, but very enjoyable 2 days for me at Mallow, I have to say.
Yeah, it was a good weekend of racing there. Nice to see Harry Cobden over as well. I'm sure plenty of people enjoyed seeing him there. Kerr was racing on Friday. First ever Good Friday meeting. They looked like they got a good crowd. I think it was a free entry sponsored by the On Course Bookmakers Association, which seemed to make an impact. I wasn't there now myself, but saw on social media they got a nice crowd there for that. A lot of the conversation last week was about Albert Einstein, Paddy. There was a bit of a mix-up during the week. Albert Einstein and his dad both taken out of the guineas in error. Aidan O'Brien said the computer went bananas. What did you make about all that? I think it was a bit of a mix-up.
I'm sure there's a pun in there somewhere. It wasn't too clever now, whoever pushed the button, really. Look, listen, you're running a multi-million euro operation, such as Ballydoyle and Coolmore, and a bit like the stall handlers, they do it day in, day out. Sometimes you make a mistake, and I'm not sure how the computers went bananas, but my computer sometimes here doesn't play ball, but it's usually when I press the wrong button, that something acts up. Look, I'd say we all know Aidan loves his attention to detail. I'd say, for as much as he hasn't come out and said anything, I'd say he would be absolutely fuming for that to be the headline about 2 of his good horses. He'd rather them talking on the track, really, if we know Aidan O'Brien at all, but they usually don't get too much info out of the camp there. But listen, someone made a mistake. It's human error. They are worth a lot of money, so their 30 grand a supplement wouldn't be like mine and your 30 grand, Emma. And look, it was a good headline there for a bit,
Yeah, I think Aidan was hoping that maybe the BHA would reinstate them because he said it
No,
was a
that was
genuine.
that was
Yeah.
that was something I actually credit the BHA for, because if that was me or you, you probably wouldn't even ask that question. And listen, it doesn't matter who you are in this game. If it should be one strike for everyone, one rule for everybody. So
I
I
definitely
was
wonder if
happy
it
enough.
happened in Ireland, what would have happened. Like, I did wonder that. I agree with you, Paddy. Like, you have to treat people the same, but I imagine
If
in
it was
Ireland, they'd
Ireland,
found a way.
he'd have got away with it. He'd have got away with it. If it was Ireland.
Yeah,
My
I think the
opinion.
most surprising thing for me was they were actually entered in the Dante. It was like a couple of days before that we were hearing that Albert Einstein wouldn't stay the mile for the Guineas, and then they were in the Dante, Johnny. That was the reasoning given. I think the administrator thought they were in the Dante, but they were actually scratching from the Guineas.
Yeah, like that, very much so. Like, Tony Keenan had a piece in the field about Albert Einstein, and there's a good bit of. I liked Irish Field's coverage actually of the race and the whole thing on Saturday. There's plenty of section and stuff, kind of backing up what I said last week. That I'm not really sure about stamina for that horse, how far he's going to go on the basis of that run at the Curragh, but I just have in my head. I'm trying to imagine exactly like the scene unfolding in Ballydoyle with the computer going bananas. Like, computer goes bananas has to be a name now for a horse in the future. But I just find because Aidan O'Brien is like such a meticulous person in terms of horses. I doubt he's very like computer literate per se. Like, I doubt it's his forte. So I'd like to kind of, maybe we shouldn't laugh, but I did think there was a bit of comic value to the whole thing because one thing, Aidan is an unbelievable man, but I doubt he's a computer nerd.
Yeah, I do. I use the VHA and HRI systems fairly regularly in work. Kind of doing the scratchings and forfeits and stuff like that. Like, the VHA system is a little bit more unforgiving. Once you scratch a horse, there's no comeback. If I don't think there was a scratching deadline last week for that race. So they'd have until, if you did it on the HRI system, you'd have until the deadline to put them back in. Whereas if you take them out in the VHA, you have no comeback, which is, a little bit difficult. So I would have sympathy for whoever did it. Like, it was just genuine error. And look, they won't be short of the few quid to put them back in anyway if it comes to it. And it might be a good headline if he has to be supplemented and then goes on to win it. We've seen it happen before. But we'll see more down the line. On Tuesday, there was a bit of a headline there for Dan Skelton. Paddy landed a nice gamble. 4 of his horses were punted across the card at Bangor and Newcastle. 3 winners at Bangor, 1 at Newcastle. 3 of them winning for the same syndicate, the Blind Squirrel Syndicate. This looks like a bit of a well laid out coup for the Skelton team.
Oh, very much so. And let's call a spade a spade. These horses were set up and they duly obliged. I was watching Twitter or X or whatever it is now just to see the reactions, of and it was very much the whoever didn't back the 3 or 4 of them were giving out saying, this, the Skeltons are doing this, Skeltons are doing that, and anyone who had the punt and got on it were saying, Jesus, that's amazing. Now look, you can go either side of the fence on this. For me, for a trainer to be able to pull off that sort of, what is it, 4 winners in 2 different tracks, like that takes some planning and some doing, race planning and organization and riders and horse, 9 times out of 10, one of your horses let you down. Something will scope bad or it'll cough or something will happen. So to have the horses at their absolute peak for that meeting is fair play to them. But then the other side is, listen, we've had, Ronan McNally here, who we all know is banned from Irish racing for similarly. I don't know if it's a similar formula or how he was. I never read into Ronan's case, but on the layman's view of it, it looks the same, that sort of way. It's just different names doing it, people getting treated differently because one is a champion trainer and one is a small man from the north. I don't know which side of the fence I'm on. I can kind of see both views. I'm sure Johnny will let me know his feelings.
Johnny, which side are you on?
I'd be with Paddy. Like, you kind of have to be nuanced on this. Like, I was talking to a trainer and a jockey in the bar yesterday, and I was saying how I really have sympathy for jockeys who are basically told going out, this horse isn't trying today because I think if you're working the system, and let's be honest, the system's the system, you want to get a horse handicapped. My view is if you want a horse to have a quiet run, and maybe this is a thing you shouldn't even say as a journalist, but like we got to acknowledge it goes on. You want a horse to get handicapped. In my view, it's the trainer's job to have the horse prepared for the day that matters. It's not the jockey's job to basically keep a horse down the field. Like that's putting the jockey shouldn't have to do that. The trainer should be able to train a horse to bring him or her along, fitness wise, distance wise, whether the horse is going left-handed or right-handed, within the rules, or certainly as much as you can within the rules. But I found, and I've had mixed views on the whole Dan Skelton thing, because I do wonder, does he get treated differently to Irish trainers, particularly with regard to Cheltenham? But what I found funny about the Bangor and the Newcastle, the coup, and fair play to, I know I have to laud the owners involved. I mean, the money of having a horse and training with the likes of Dan Skelton compared to prize money in Britain, like, or in Ireland, it's like so expensive. But what I thought was funny, the first one won at 2:45, Coups, which is named after probably my favourite beach in the world in Kerry. But so the Coups won 15 days favourite, and you go to the Racing Post. Trainer said regarding the apparent improvement in form, so on and so forth, right? So that was the first. Then onto the 350, Palamon went off evens favourite readily. Trainer's rep said regarding the apparent improvement in form, so on and so forth. So the stewards were busy, right? Onto the 420, Christian Williams, who's does a lot of social media around the beauty of his yard by the coast, 5-4 favourite. I'm not suggesting this has anything to do with the coup, but again, trainer said regarding the apparent improvement in form. So 3 races in a row, these connections were in to basically explain how a well-backed horse, had landed a gamble and so on and so forth. On to the 450, service minimum 8-15 favourite readily. No comments. It's like as if the stewards just said, we're done. I've given up at this stage. We're just not even going to bother calling them in. So according to the Racing Post, the 450, which was the third leg of the treble, they didn't even call in the connections over the apparent improvement in form. So I'd say it was an interesting day for the stewards in Bangor. And like, it must be fun. Like, it must be weird for the steward, like calling in trainers and connections on a day like this. And a lot of it is just going through the motions, I suppose. But if you are policing the game properly, there are 2 ways of looking at it. It's great to land a touch, but what if you back the horses the day before?
Yeah, look, I without sitting on the fence too much, I do agree with you both. There's 2 sides to it. I find these kind of coups fascinating, to be honest, and you'd have to applaud anyone who can pull them off, because so much can go wrong. Like, as Paddy said, like, one thing goes wrong and like you've loads of money down the drain. So if anyone can pull off, especially like 3-4 horses involved, like it's class to see it pulled off in one way, but then the other way, like, you'd wonder, maybe are the Skeltons being treated a little bit more favourably by both the officials and the media a little bit as well? Like, their coups seem to be reported in a different way than other yards, who pull off similar things, seem to be, for whatever reason. Look, I don't really have any negative feelings about it myself, but, I think it should be one rule for all, and one, if you're going to, even you'd see it on social media, people, if someone pulled off a gamble like that in Ireland, it's all bent Irish racing, all this. But, if it's done in England, then it's the best thing that ever happened, which is...
The other thing that needs to be said is, if you're a really honest trainer, right, and you train your horses and they finish second, and you've laid out a horse yourself, they finish second to one of these coup horses. Like, it's great if you're this is all insider information. If you're in on the punt, that's fine. But if you're a trainer who's been uber honest and you run into these absolute plots on the day, there will be an element of you saying, okay, fair play to them for doing that. But like, I'm the unlucky one here. Like, I've basically run into these horses and I pretty much no chance of beating them on the day, even though I've done everything right. So there's, don't forget about the people who are maybe struggling a bit or are running their horses absolutely honourably every day of the week, and they run into a gamble like this and they're beaten.
Yeah, I suppose the loser will always be upset, Johnny. Like, but like, in a way, like, when you have these kind of lower grade of horses, you kind of have to find a way to make them pay somehow. And sometimes, backing them is the only way to do that. Realistically, the cost of training fees and the amount of prize money you're winning, it's just probably not.
I honestly, it boils down to the handicapper, doesn't it? Really, at the end of the day, and the English handicapper seems to be extremely lenient on the Skeltons compared to anyone Irish. And I think this bit of a coup is just probably leading on from what happened in Cheltenham with Skelton's horses winning so easy and treated so well. So this one is going to make more headlines again. But like, I think in Ireland, anyone that does it, they get hammered. They get hammered. Every horse they have after it gets put up more than it should be. Whereas it seems the Skeltons haven't got that sort of, they haven't got there yet with the English handicapper. I think that's a lot to do with it, to be honest, because if once there's money involved and if you find yourself a loophole, well, you're going to take it, you know.
Yeah, like, and you can't blame them for doing it if they're getting away with it. Like, I mean, anyone would, but it's just, we'll kind of maybe leave a slight sour taste, the fact, you know, that some people get treated differently than others, you know, by the handicapper as well, Kai, like you mentioned, is a big one to there. But lads, we'll look forward to Aintree for just a couple of minutes here now, because we're kind of running on a bit. Declarations out for Thursday now. We might maybe possibly see a few more from Gordon Elliott's heading over. You'd imagine his title challenge might be coming to a halt now. He's just over 200 grand ahead of Willie after Fairyhouse, which he'll be probably maybe slightly disappointed with. Bright Days Ahead has been declared for Thursday. We've got Spillane's Tower, Yango Bay, Imperi Pass. It looks a good card on Thursday so far. What are you looking forward to most at Aintree, Johnny?
I'm looking forward to those good horses. Like, I find Aintree difficult it doesn't really do it for me as a festival for some reason. I find horses there just often disappoint. They were trained for Cheltenham, not Aintree. And generally I feel if you're taking on if you have a short price horse who ran at Cheltenham, by and large oppose him. But like, I'm looking forward to seeing Lambeth stepping up and Trip, and you know, that clash between the New Lion and Brighter Days Ahead and the remainder in that race is going to be really interesting as well. You know, the National's a race that I've lost interest largely in, but in fairness, some very good racing at Aintree.
There is, Paddy, looking forward to the National yourself? JP, strong hand as ever in there.
Yeah, JP, massive hand, isn't he? Every year it seems like he's getting more and more horses and kind of buying horses, even if he has to for it. You know, it's amazing that he loves the race so much. I'm a bit like Johnny at the minute, to be honest with you. The English National is kind of, when I was riding, you know, it was there with the Gold Cup. You know what I mean? If you wanted to win one, you'd say, Jesus, it's impossible to split the English National and the Gold Cup. And now it's not. You know, it's just basically not. And I think they've made it more speed, to be honest with you. Now I know everyone's making this opinion. The fences are smaller. That's fine. But like Beecher's Brook, there's no brook anymore. And there's very little of a drop off. You'll see next week or during the week that half the field will go down the inside. Whereas 15 years ago, if you went down the inside, it's a suicide mission. You know, you were going down and that was it. You really had to ride the race. And basically when we were kind of doing it, we used to just try and follow Ruby, you know, and wherever he went, if you were within 4 or 5 lengths of him, you were probably in the right spot. But yeah, it doesn't have the lure for me. Now I love Aintree and I really like the track as a race course. And I love the chase track there. I won a Beecher there, and I just got beaten another Grade 1 year on Schindler's Hunt. And yeah, the National is grand. I'd nearly rather the amateur race over it, to be honest with you. I think there's more spectacle and there's more of a buzz about it. Be interesting to see if Spillane's Tower runs. You know, I hopefully will have a bit of juice in the ground, but I think if he runs, he's great value, I think, with being a fresh horse. But I suppose when he didn't run in Cheltenham, you'd be worried that the ground might be a touch quick for him.
Yeah, you'd be worried about that, all right. I'm not sure what the weather is like over there, but the ground is drying out fairly quickly here anyway, at least. So imagine it's probably not too dissimilar in Liverpool, but I'd be the same as you. I'd be looking forward to him if he shows up. I'll be doing a runner there on Thursday for the National. Anyone who's watching who wants to tune in for that as well, where I'll go through everything that's been declared. But lads, we'll wrap up this show and I'll ask you for a horse to follow before we finish. Johnny, I'll go to you first.
I'm Slippy, who ran in Mallow, took my eye a bit. If you have a day or two, just look at horses in Mallow and mainly Fairyhouse that you think, God, this horse could be interesting at Punchtown. There are a lot of horses who didn't win or who were sort of placed, but maybe, you know, some runners that mightn't necessarily have been overly fancy. It's hard to know what I'm Slippy. He seemed to be back, but I definitely thought this is a smart horse. I think if, you know, I seem to recall the owner and Robert Tyner having a horse going to Punchtown I really fancied before in a handicap hurdle. I can't remember his name now, but I'm Slippy. If he goes to Punchtown, keep an eye on him. He still has upside, I think.
Very good. I liked Bartholomew at Cork. You were there on was it the Saturday he ran
Lovely
for
run.
Martin Brazil? Yeah. Even the interview with Martin beforehand, he seemed kind of, I suppose he'd never be too loud about it, but he was quietly confident in the horse, I suppose. And interesting to say he might enter him in the Grade 1 hurdle at Punchestown afterwards. So he's obviously a horse who they think has massive ability, and he wouldn't speak about a horse having that ability unless he really believed it as well. So he definitely one I put in the tracker after that. He was very, very impressive. Paddy, what caught your eye?
Yeah, he did as well, Emma, and it wouldn't be like Martin Brazel now to waste the fee an entry fee into a Grade 1, and he's very selective with his horses. Well, another one there, a horse Johnny Wardle know pretty well. I think he's tipped him up a lot of times. Fierce Handy, Noel Mead's horse. I thought he was super impressive again, to be honest with you, and he's definitely a horse on the way up, and I still think he could be well handicapped. He could be a graded horse, this fella, and I'd say he will when he jumps a fence, maybe next year. But he's been to all the dogfights, and he just keeps turning up, from Leopardstown to Cheltenham, now Fairyhouse, and look, he wouldn't be surprised if he rocked on to Punchestown and won again.
Yeah, he's in some form, the yard as well, Emma. Like, Jesus, flat horses and jumps horses, and Noel, I don't know what the percentage of his flat team now versus his national hunt team is, like, because basically I think the way the game was gone, the way horses were becoming, he couldn't kind of afford to buy national hunt horses like the days of old. He ended up kind of maybe having more flat horses. But Jesus, between, like, I don't know, it's some run of form, like, to the weekend that he had, and Fierce Handy is a horse that just like Paddy says, keeps on progressing. But yeah, some form the yard's in.
Irish Gold Cup, Cheltenham bumper winners, and good flat horse as well. But Noel's a cracking trainer, always was.
Yeah, they're flying. He had that Lafayette one in the Cora as well, didn't he, on Friday? And Colcannon, who people are kind of touting as a Galway Earl horse down the line, he was very impressive at Fairyhouse over the weekend as well. So definitely flying. And like you said, like, I'd say he's vast majority flat now. I'm not really sure what the numbers are exactly, but he seems to be concentrating way more on that. But they're definitely coming into good form, maybe liking that nicer ground. But lads, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks very much, everyone, and thanks everyone for listening. If you enjoyed the show, make sure and like and subscribe, and we'll be back next week to review everything that went on over the weekend.